Welcome to the Beyond Jiu-Jitsu podcast, episode number 51. Today, we are talking all about how to train when you can't train.
How to train when you can't train. Kieren, welcome back, bro.
Thank you, thank you.
People are going to be like, what do you mean welcome back? You guys didn't go anywhere. Well, it was seamless.
Joke's on you.
Yeah, we had done a bit of pre-recording to get us through the holiday period. Didn't want to leave you guys with
nothing,
no podcast episodes while you're on holidays. So this is our first episode back for 2022 of us recording. If you're still with us after listening to the dog shit episode 50.
I think we titled that Don't Listen to This.
Yeah,
so
something
hopefully
like,
you listen to our
something
advice.
like that. It was our mini half-century episode. So, a little mini milestone for us. So we were quite happy with that. If you didn't listen to that episode, don't bother.
Yeah, don't bother.
We just talked about nothing for, 30 minutes or something. It was a waste of time.
We've done this before where we've done like a ridiculous intro or something like that and then spitballed and said, oh, imagine if this is someone's first ever episode. And actually get comments like that this was my first episode.
Yeah.
I wonder if that is going to happen to episode 50. Someone's going to try and listen to that and be like, what the fuck is this?
They didn't even say the word jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. But today we're going to talk about how to train when you can't train. This sort of topic was inspired by my trip to Sweden. So I just came back from Sweden. I was there for about a month. So yeah, access to jiu-jitsu, it was there. So I did actually train a couple times. Yeah.
But it was also during December, Christmas. So it was also that period of time where many people go to Sweden. No.
Everyone goes.
I mean, lots of people some people opt not to train just because they're on holidays, but other people maybe want to train, but they can't because the gym's closed for Christmas and whatnot. Or maybe you've traveled somewhere where you don't have, you trained a couple of times, but logistically it was quite
very difficult. Yeah, it was about an hour.
So you
travel.
might not have the ability to train, but you still want to train.
Exactly.
Or sometimes people need to train because maybe there's a competition in early January or early February. And they're like, no, well, I'm not taking, I'm not going to have a 2-week bender over Christmas, New Year's because I've got this comp coming up, So some people need to train, but gyms are closed and, their training partners are on holidays. And so how do you train when you can't train, but you need to train?
Even in today's climate with the, what going on, places are still being locked down around the world and going into snap lockdowns and things like that. So gyms are closing for other reasons, as I'm sure everyone is very, very aware. So
it's like it's crazy around the world. I mean, we're not a political COVID podcast, but I mean, here in Sydney, man, like almost everyone either has it or someone is a close contact or whatever. And obviously different states and countries have different rules. But at the moment, it's even though gyms are allowed to be open and whatnot, it's a little hard to train because you don't have many people to train with. There's so many people who either have COVID or are close contact. So by the rules that we have in New South Wales, they're not allowed to train.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not allowed to leave their house. There's even a bunch of restaurants in Bondi that are closed because they have no staff because their staff are either have COVID or in isolation due to a close contact.
Yeah.
The US today, did you see how many cases the US recorded today in one day?
No,
1 million.
Whoa.
In one day.
That's insane.
Omicron has, I read that they've said it's the fastest spreading virus in history.
But apparently it is compared to the other variants, and I think we should leave it here, but compared to the other variants, it's less deadly. But
that's what I've heard. I mean,
I don't know.
I mean,
I'm not a virologist.
Yeah. It's just.
I'm not even a jiu-jitsuologist.
Yeah.
That was terrible.
That's all right. I'll let that go. That was pretty good. I'm not going into the specifics of vaccines and COVID and whatever, but just
if you want vaccine information,
people say, I don't know.
Yeah, I recommend Joe Rogan if you want accurate vaccine information. Triggered. Yeah. It's 5 minutes in.
But anyway, regardless, again, it's going to depend where you are in the world and even where you are inside one country. But here in New South Wales, there's gyms are allowed to be open, but there are far less of your training partners around. Even some people Joey, who we had on the podcast, the episode 48, 49.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
I don't have my laptop.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
I think it was 48.
But Joey, like one of my black belts, my
47.
first black belt, he's not training at the moment, not because he has COVID or anything, but his partner's mother is quite sick. So they're just trying to minimize any risk of, so there's just not a lot of people to train with. But how do you get your training in, Kieren? How do you get your training in when you're in Sweden? You don't speak the language. It's minus 20 outside. You got no gyms.
It's cold as shit.
What did you do?
Yeah, so basically...
The people want to know, Kieren.
The people. Give the people what they want. Yeah, so when I was in Sweden, story time, I was training most days. I was lifting weights most days. I think I probably, on average, lift at least 5 times a week on average.
Was that just like a generic gym that was
near?
Yeah,
it's like I nicknamed it the Viking gym because it's like super grungy. It's like dirt cheap. Like for what it cost a month there is what a gym in Sydney costs for a week. It's dirt cheap, but it's got everything you need. It's like really old school. It's just the classic Viking gym. I got some videos and stuff on my Instagram of it. So I was lifting there, but with what I was training, and we'll get into this in the meat of the episode, is I was trying to focus on my weak areas. So I was doing a little bit of cardio just to maintain. I was lifting most days. I was working on agility, and I was also doing sauna and cold contrast recovery sessions. So I was,
I hate saunas, bro.
I love them.
I don't know, just the hot air in my lungs.
I love that shit.
I hate it.
Oh, I got a story about that you would hate even more. But so that's pretty much what I was doing. And man, I froth on that shit. And in terms of nutrition, I was eating really, really well. Obviously I wasn't, no sugar, no chocolate, all that sort of shit. I definitely indulged throughout the period, but the consistency of the meals, and I wasn't having like takeout or anything like that. So really, good home cooked meals. And yeah, that's pretty much how I rocked it for the month. And I did get a few sessions in at their local Jiu-Jitsu gym. It was a MMA style gym, so they did everything from MMA, kickboxing. They had like judo, and then they had the upstairs section was dedicated to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and what they call freestyle. I think they were calling it submission grappling or something along those lines. But it was, from my understanding, it was a combination between just no gi and freestyle wrestling. So it was a bit of a hybrid. I never actually did any of those sessions, but I just stuck with the gi and I did the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which was pretty good. So I got some hectic rolls in and, stayed a little bit fresh, I suppose.
Did you represent? Did you smash them?
Yeah.
Nice.
I didn't really tell them like who I was or anything, or share social media or anything like that. So I know they're not going to listen to this. But I'm not going to insult them or anything. Like, really, really lovely guys. Good group of people. Their head coach there, their black belt, was very welcoming. He even tried to translate everything he was teaching. He would teach it in Swedish and then translate it to English for me.
Did he speak good English?
Oh yeah. They're all pretty much fluent.
Yeah.
They're very, very good English. Like, they have accents, but fuck, we do. We have thicker accents, I reckon.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was good. But yeah, represented, man. Like, smashed. Put the smash on. So it was pretty fun. Yeah.
But I remember you told me it was a bit weird, like you did heel hooks in the gi.
Yeah, we did heel hooks in gi, and reflecting on it, I think that the guy that the coach, they don't do no gi. If you want to do no gi, I think you do
the submission one.
The submission grappling that I was talking about. So I think in their defense, looking back, like reflecting on it, because like a lot of those guys only do gi, they would never do heel hooks any other time. So the fact that we're doing heel hooks in gi, I was like, what is going on in this circus? But then, reflecting on it and reviewing the situation, I think it made sense. And he was very clear, like, you are not to do this in competition. This is against the rules, because we're doing knee reaps and we're doing obviously heel hooks. So yeah, that made sense. But it was cool. Like, he was referencing Gordon Ryan a lot, referencing Danaher and Craig Jones, and
man, screw Gordon Ryan. That dude's a dick.
Yeah, we'll also get into that. But he was talking about Craig Jones as well, and we like that guy. So.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah.
Gordon, like, it's just gotten even worse. Could do a whole nother episode, a whole nother trash talking episode talking about his recent.
If you don't know what we were talking about, basically,
basically he made a child abuse joke.
Yeah.
Not basically, he did.
He did. He made like not even he made like a very very bizarre joke, and he doubled down on it, trying to justify it. If you're following jiu-jitsu fucking, what would you call it, tabloid sort of shit, jiu-jitsu news, you would have seen this story.
Yeah,
it's pretty
it's not
disgusting.
even banter. Banter is like tongue in cheek, taking the piss out of it. This is just like
there's lines, man. There's like lines in the sand.
Yeah,
and
it's like
fucking shit all
Herbert
over
Santos and Gordon Ryan
Yeah.
talking crap to each other over social media, and both of them are in the wrong.
Yeah, they're both in the wrong. They're just as bad as each other. And I think people are focusing in on Gordon Ryan because of.
Well, I mean, like Herbert has never been on the correct side of the line, whereas Gordon, like, has always been a bit of a troll online.
But he crossed.
But
the
I
line,
mean, Anyway,
so
yeah,
how to train when you can't train.
So one of the things you briefly mentioned was doing agility training.
Yeah.
And so this is something that kind of like I had given you to do while you were over there. So if you need to train and you can't train, right? As in you don't have access to a jiu-jitsu gym, or you don't have any training partners or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So you can't train as in you can't do jiu-jitsu. Because obviously, unless you're strapped to a bed. I mean, you could be in hotel quarantine and you can still train. There's lots of bodywork stuff that if you need to train, you can still train, right? But if you can't, jiu-jitsu train. So working on your weak areas is the perfect place to start doing these complementary training sessions or exercises that you maybe don't have the time to do in your regular schedule when you're doing jiu-jitsu twice a day, every day or whatever, and you're lifting, and it can be hard to fill these little gaps. So one of the things that I'd been talking to Kieren about was, he can be a little like heavy on his feet because you're flat-footed, right? So it's naturally something that it's hard for you not to be heavier on your feet compared to someone else, right? And we were looking at some footage of you doing stand-up, and when I showed it to you, you could see, you're like, oh, wow, like you can see the difference in the way I'm moving compared to A, B, and C are moving. So we took advantage of the fact that you essentially had a month with not really any access to jiu-jitsu. Like in the 4 weeks, you did 2 sessions at this gym. Yeah, just again, because logistically it was just too hard to get there and back. So we had decided that we wanted you to work on agility, similar to what sprinters or NFL players do, like all that sort of like ladder work, or boxers do it, like heaps of those, like the rollout ladders on the ground, or skipping, and those little drills where like you dodge side to side through cones and all that. Something that if you were here in Sydney, perhaps you weren't going to have the time, or it wasn't high enough on the priority list.
Yeah,
because
that's a good way to put it.
The sort of like flat-footedness, kind of heavy on your feet, is really only applicable when you're standing. It's not something it's irrelevant when you're playing guard. When you're on top passing, it doesn't matter as much. You're still pretty agile, but it's very clear when you're doing stand-up. But if you were here in Sydney, okay, stand-up's such a small portion of the game. That's why the reason a lot of jiu-jitsu guys don't learn judo and whatnot is because it's all negated with a simple guard pull.
Yeah.
So to devote a huge chunk of your time to become more agile, just so you can be better at stand-up, just to have your opponent pull guard, like, I mean, you've got limited amount of time. It doesn't add up why you would do that.
Yeah, totally agree.
But you were about to spend a month with no access to jiu-jitsu, and so then why not like lean into this and work on that a little bit. So that's definitely a good piece of advice for how to train when you can't train. Take advantage of the fact that you've got all these hours freed up that you would typically be doing jiu-jitsu, and work on something that you never get the time to work on.
Yeah.
Because then I think also on the flip side, it's going to be slightly easier, depending on what you're working on, but slightly easier in the sense that it's to some degree semi-novel, so you're not going to hate it as much. Like when was the last time you had ever done like agility training?
Oh man, I can't even. Oh, maybe like before I joined the Navy, I got a PT and we did some of that.
So I don't know, we haven't spoken about this, but I don't know if you were doing some of those workouts, or you did the first 1 or 2 and you're like, oh, that was a bit of fun, because it's like novel.
Yeah, it was
like
different. Yeah.
Exactly. It was different. Like if you're you need to take the time to, I don't know, whatever it is, work on your flexibility or work on your lower back and your deadlift. And all of a sudden you're like, hey, this is deadlifting's fun because it's something you don't do on a regular basis. So it doesn't have that grind to it. And it's for a limited amount of time, right? Like you knew you were pretty much just working on that for 4 weeks or whatever. So it's finite. You're not going to burn yourself out.
Yeah, exactly.
How was that approach to the training?
Yeah, it was good. Like it gave me something to focus on. I didn't feel like I was, just treading water, just trying to stay fit enough. I think I got stronger over the period. And to say that my agility has improved, that's yet to be seen. I need to do some more stand up. But I mean, I got better at the drills. So, I mean, I wasn't doing anything super complicated either. Just really, really basic. I mean, to really take advantage of it, I would probably want to seek out someone that knows more about doing agility training than I do, or maybe, review some more research material on it and then put together a more like comprehensive plan. But for what it's worth, as you mentioned, like for the 4 weeks, I think I did improve enough to justify doing it, if that makes sense. But I mean, I was doing mobility every day, like once or twice a day. I was still lifting and I was doing the agility. So I think I was improving multiple facets at the same time. Yeah.
So that brings me to the next thing I was going to mention, which was working on, again, something that you kind of sometimes don't have the time or that is overlooked, which is mobility.
Yeah, so important.
Super, super important to jiu-jitsu. Not everyone is naturally gifted with a great range of motion and mobility. So some people it's going to be a little harder than others, but jiu-jitsu guys are notorious for having really poor mobility, right? Particularly in their knees and their hips, because your hip flexors, for example, get the most jacked out of any muscle when you train jiu-jitsu. The amount of time that we sit, like sitting playing guard, it's the same position you sit when you're sitting at a desk. When you're driving the car, your hip flexors get so jacked. And, mobility is such a crucial piece of the puzzle for jiu-jitsu that even if you have good mobility, you need to work on it.
Yeah.
If you want to prolong your jiu-jitsu career or jiu-jitsu lifestyle. So again, it's something that gets really overlooked. So if you're not able to train jiu-jitsu, man, please, for the love of God, work on your mobility. Because what people don't understand is like the bigger your range of motion, like the more strength you have throughout that whole range of motion, whereas if you don't have that mobility, the closer you get to the end range, like your strength like peters off, right? That's why when, it's really hard to, let's say you're doing, I don't know, let's say butterfly guard. And if I fully compress your heels to your butt, it's really hard to extend and do like a leg extension because you're at max compression, right? You're at the end of your range of motion. Like it's very hard to get going from that point, right? Whereas if you were only at 90 degrees, you can do a leg extension nice and easily. But if you improve your range of motion, like you can push that where the strength cut off further to that end range. You know what I mean, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So working on your mobility is crucial, man. And we've got, two of my training partners / students being previous guests on the show, Joey and JT, the creators of Bulletproof. Man, like these are guys that are not only super strong and super mobile, like they're so strong at all ranges of their range of motion.
Yeah.
Like most people, let's say you're Kimura-ing someone, most people, you feel their shoulder give out, not as in like the structural integrity of the shoulder, but you feel the strength of their shoulder give out before they tap, right? Mm-hmm. It then just becomes a matter of like taking it to the point where the pain is significant enough for them to tap, but the strength of them being able to stop that internal or external rotation on their shoulder has already given out. Whereas you Kimura or Americana, someone like Joey or JT, like they have strength to fight that rotation all the way until they hit the pain threshold and they're going to tap. They're strong. It's if you've never trained with someone like that, who is strong throughout their whole range of motion, you're going to you just kind of have to experience it. It's actually quite shocking when you first realize that someone is strong all the way through the range of motion of their joint, because most people aren't.
Yeah, and that's the key difference between flexibility and mobility. So mobility is having range of motion, but strength in throughout that entire range of motion, as you're pointing out with the Kimura example is perfect. Whereas flexibility, which I'm sure you've had training partners that are super flexible.
Yeah, or people go, oh, I'm my shoulder's double jointed, so I can't be Kimura. And it's like, well, you
can. Oh my God, no, I will show you. I have. So yeah, in that flexibility, yeah, okay. So maybe your joint can move through that range of motion, but you have no strength there. Yeah, cool. You're flexible, whatever. That's awesome. But are you strong in that position? And that's the key difference between flexibility and mobility. So
and they're both important, right?
They are both important, but mobility is flexibility, but strength in that position. So yeah, I think
you're saying you could argue mobility
includes flexibility and strength. So I'd say that flexibility is important in mobility, but mobility also has that strength component, which is more important. So first, just to give some,
I more think about it like this, I guess. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think about it as mobility being the flexibility / strength of your joints, which joints aren't flexible, right? Like when you think about a joint being flexible, like what you're actually talking about is hyperextension of your tendons and ligaments that hold it together, and they're not designed to stretch. Like, I mean, yeah, they got a bit of give, but you don't want to you don't want to lengthen your ACL.
Yes.
Like you want to lengthen your hamstring if you want to get more flexible. So I more think about mobility as in improving the stability, strength, range of motion, like turning my knee joint into an Ironman joint.
Yeah.
And I think about flexibility as in my muscles, like all the, everything that's connecting my joints.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. But I think with mobility training, you're working the muscles, the contiguous muscle system around your joints as well. And if your muscles are stronger in their maximum ranges, then they'll be able to protect your joints and your ligaments and your tendons. So
yes.
Yeah. And that's why coupling some, lack of a better term, more practical or practical strength work around mobility work as well, those as like a couplet is brilliant for jiu-jitsu. And that's what guys like Bulletproof for BJJ do. Also,
we've plugged them a bunch of times, right? But anyone who's, already listening to this episode thinking, shut up and tell me how to do it. Well, I mean, Bulletproof have a whole online program, where they have options for if you have no equipment, and then they have options for if you've got access to, squat racks and kettlebells and whatever. And so if you're wanting more specific like workout programs, there's a lot out there, but we believe our friends at Bulletproof for BJJ do it the best.
Yeah.
So it's a great program to jump on if you already want to stop listening and start working out.
This episode is sponsored by Bulletproof for BJJ. Use
pay
use
up,
code
bitches.
Jiu-Jitsu. No, I'm kidding. We're not affiliated at all. Fuck them. But if you also, I will plug my favorite mobility specific guy to follow is a guy named Kelly Starrett. He's the author of a book called Becoming a Supple Leopard. And his sort of online program, if you will, is called The Ready State. Used to be called Mobility WOD for those people that have ever, he's more ingrained in the CrossFit world, but this guy's fucking awesome. So I use a lot of his stuff every day, and I do a lot of Bulletproof as well. And I find that Bulletproof is more obviously geared toward jiu-jitsu and a strength-based approach to mobility. And Kelly has a similar approach. They sort of have similar sort of theories, if you will, and practices. But I find that Kelly's stuff is also very, very good for mobility specifically. Right. So if you're someone out there that you're like, fuck, I need to work on mobility, but I also want to work on strength, go for Bulletproof for BJJ. If you're a guy out there that, you have 10 years of strength training and I recommend having a look at Kelly as well.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So I use a lot of Kelly stuff.
I haven't heard.
But they're both great.
Yeah. There's also, you could look into, when we spoke a few episodes ago, we spoke about, our approach to strength and conditioning training. And one of the things that I said was that I really don't enjoy it. So I kind of go by that. Well, the best workout's the one you're going to do.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. So if you're of that mind as well, you have other options like there's yoga for BJJ.
Yeah.
There's Gymnastica Natural, which is that whole sort of Jiu-Jitsu movement stuff. And man, if you haven't done it, it's incredibly taxing.
It's kind of like animal flow for jiu-jitsu specifically.
And it's really tough. Like a lot of body weight exercises, it's very, how difficult it is dependent on how strict you are with your form.
Yeah.
You know, like you can
always cheat.
You can cheat it a little bit,
Yeah.
but man, Gymnastica Natural, if you try stay strict to the form, is super tough.
Yeah.
Super tough. We were doing a few of them during whenever the last lockdown was.
How to train when you can't train.
Yeah, we were doing, we were doing Zoom classes, and some of them were Gymnastica Natural classes, and man, they were tough.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think for me, taking advantage and working on those areas that you don't often have the time for, or is a weakness and you wouldn't have the time for, is what I would do when I don't have access. If I had traveled overseas and I'm coming back and I have to do 2 weeks hotel quarantine or something like that, what am I going to do? Well, like the things that I always neglect, because it's easy for me to go, I don't have time because I'm working and teaching and training and I got my family and whatever. But now I'm 2 weeks in a hotel room. For me, it's going to be like my flexibility, because I always get away with not stretching because I'm so tall. I can kind of like cheat the system a bit because I got long legs, but I need to stretch more. So I'd be working on my flexibility. I'd be working on, you know, my little weak chicken legs and the things that I often neglect because I don't have the time. So if you're needing to train because you've got a fight coming up, or you just don't want to take time off, but the gym's closed and you've got no one to train with, that's a good place to start.
Yeah. And practically speaking, how I would do that, if I was to go back in time and maybe not know everything that I know, but
I can't sing that. Last time we tried to use that song, and what was it?
No, we tried to use
a song and then
we got copyrighted.
Yeah, Kieren went to upload the episode.
I had to edit it out.
Yeah.
So if you listen to like episode 50, I think it was, if it sounds janky, it's because I had to cut like.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
it was the last episode.
I just played on my phone that celebrate good times, and we got copyrighted.
Yeah. So I had to fuck that off. Anyway, so practically speaking, if I was in a position where I couldn't train, or even fuck it, if this would probably help you right now, even if you are training like 2 days, 2 times a day, every day, whatever, is make a list, literally write out your weaknesses. Do a self-review, write out all of your jiu-jitsu weaknesses.
Oh, I just wrote not a good lover.
Yeah. Chocolate. Yeah, not like that, but write out all of your jiu-jitsu weaknesses. For example, maybe it is...
You're going to need more paper, bro.
Yeah, for me, I'll need a whole fucking book. But maybe it is, like in my example, heavy on the feet in stand-up. It could be something along the lines of maybe you have really shit shoulder mobility, and whenever you're in a Kimura or Americana, it's normally you could escape, like a normal person could, but you can't because you have
you're
really
like
shit
tapping
shoulders.
as soon as they connect their hands.
Yeah,
or
which isn't good,
you know?
because you should be able to fight. You should be able to fight that position a bit. It could be, I don't know, maybe.
Well, it could be like, let's say, your guard retention's terrible.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
Actually,
or maybe you're passing shit, or your Terry unders are shit, or something along those lines.
Yeah, and sometimes it can. Let's talk about guard retention, right? Like, sometimes it can be a technical mistake you're making, or I know that when Lachlan Giles, when he realized that his guard retention was quite poor and it needed to be improved, he realized it was a lack of flexibility that was limiting his ability to pummel his legs in and whatever and have better guard retention.
Yeah.
So it's not always going to be like, oh, I need to lift, or I need to do sand sprints or something. Sometimes it might be just, oh, I need to stretch more, or whatever it is.
Absolutely.
Right?
So write out that list, literally get a blank piece of paper, do it in your journal if you have one, and write out dot point form a big fuck off list. And then I would go through and rank them in order of what's important to you, or what you think is going to make the biggest impact on your game. So say you have 5 different things, rank them out 1 to 5, and then have a look at each individual item. Say, for example, the first one is guard retention. That's a great example to go off. Then think about all of the things that you can do outside of technique, outside of jiu-jitsu to improve that point. So easy one, guard retention. Lachlan Giles identified that it's range of motion, flexibility, and mobility of his muscles and joints to be able to pummel his legs in. So maybe if that's the case for you, work on specific hip exercises. It would be a quick Google search. You can Google bulletproof for BJJ or yoga for BJJ or Kelly Starrett or just
or
YouTube.
Just like God, yeah, just
like hip mobility.
Yeah.
Like there's so much free, awesome stuff out there. Some of it's better than others. That's why we're sort of steering you towards who we found very reputable. But regardless, you could just YouTube it and then make a mini program for yourself. You don't need to be a PT or an expert. Just pick like 3 or 4 exercises to do and do them every day to improve or however often you're going to train when you can't train and work on those. And then go to number 2 and then add, basically if you go down the list and do the same approach for each item, you'll be able to come up with a comprehensive program. Now, I would also say if it is a technique fault, maybe you've identified your biggest weakness is that you always like lose position in mount or something like that. Maybe it is technical, and then you could add on to your how to train when you can't train, review this instructional or review this technique or look at Jordan Teaches Jiu-Jitsu on YouTube or whatever about how to maintain guard and just do a little bit of study.
Well, it's a good segue because I was wanting to then move on and talk about, okay, we've spoken how do we train physically, when we can't train, but what about the mental side of it? What about if you've established you're nothing short of a physical specimen and there's nothing that needs improving, and you're
Preaching to the choir here, Adam.
Yeah, whatever, Bigfoot.
Bigfoot?
Well, your flat feet, your big flat feet stomping around.
Yeah.
So what about the other side of it? You want to train, the mental side of jiu-jitsu, or you want to physically train some jiu-jitsu, but you can't train. Well, I mean, get a grappling dummy, but short of that, right? So let's say you're like, okay, I don't want to do so much strength work or mobility work. Like I want to be a bit more jiu-jitsu active. Well, then, yeah, you've got things like shinatsu natural, which are like all jiu-jitsu movements. But as well as that, you can do solo drilling. I know for anyone who hasn't done it or isn't sure what I'm talking about, you might be thinking that's stupid, but it can be a super powerful tool to do solo drilling / visualization, right? Where you're essentially drilling with an imaginary partner. I used to watch, Levi Jones Leary and I used to train when we were together as purple and brown belts here in Sydney. And man, at the end of every class, he would probably just spend like 30 minutes by himself drilling. You'd see him over on the mats with his eyes closed. And of course, you can't execute every movement like, because there's no one there. But he would, so you're often where you'd typically be holding a collar to pull yourself up, you're having to put your hand on the ground to post and get up or whatever, right? But it's just the act of visualization. Like it's such a powerful tool, right? A lot of sports psychologists talk about it when they're dealing with their own clients and athletes. So it is a really great way to do jiu-jitsu movements, but also do the mental side of it. Yeah, it looks silly, but who cares, right?
I've done that myself. Like I've been watching a video or an instructional or watching a technique on the internet or whatever, and then I'm like, fuck, I need to see what this would be like. So I literally get on the floor, chuck a mat down, like a yoga mat, and go through the movement and try and visualize it.
Yeah, like because you could be watching, like, at the moment, one of the things you're working on is the over-under passes. Yeah. Most people know, if you don't know, the best over-under passer is Bernardo Faria, for one of the head guys of BJJ Fanatics. Mm-hmm. So you could be watching one of his instructionals, and then, man, you get down on the ground by yourself, what I did, and you whether you close your eyes or not is irrelevant. But talk yourself through it. You'd be like, okay, so I'm here. I get the underhook, grab their belt. Other one, make sure, okay, got to
Stuff
keep
the
their
leg,
leg in
yeah.
between my legs so I don't get triangled, up on my toes,
Yep.
shoulder here, yep, heavy, then I walk this way,
Yeah.
pummel the leg, man, it's super, super strong.
Yeah.
Right? It's a very powerful way to.
It's not perfect, but it's better than not doing it. You know what I mean?
Okay, it's not perfect as in it's not with another partner, but
Yeah, but it's
like,
fucking good.
it's really good, man, because when you've got the other partner as well, you can just to some extent sort of switch off and just go through the motions without actually putting thought into it. When you're by yourself, you're literally like, you're having to imagine there's another person there. You literally have to
see everything,
right, on your own. I think it's a great tool. And I would even advise people, if you've got the time, even in your regular training, if you can add that in, man, it's a great way to drill, to learn. It's also like, how do you think people what do you think people do when they're at home at night and they're trying to go to sleep and jiu-jitsu's running through their mind and they're trying to figure out why they got submitted or couldn't finish that sweep or whatever? Man, they have to visualize it. Man, it's like the Queen's Gambit. That's what it is. Have you seen it? Did you watch that?
Of course I see the Queen's Gambit.
Where she's lying in bed and visualizing the chess pieces.
So we
on
need
the
to get
ceiling.
some
It's
Oxycontin.
like that.
We need to get some drugs and drop a bit of acid, look at the ceiling and see jiu-jitsu. That's what you're saying?
I just took some now. Right? I think, it's really, I know there's a previous episode where I went on about how powerful of a tool visualization can be, but
can't be understated.
If you want to train and you can't train, right? Yeah, you've got all I'm working on my strength or my mobility or whatever it is. But then there's like, okay, I want to do more jiu-jitsu stuff. Yeah, you've got ginástica natural, visualization training, or you've got, watching instructionals or YouTube, or even, man, don't underestimate just even what can be gained from just watching jiu-jitsu as a spectator.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you might just put on just find a fight on YouTube, or maybe you're watching, maybe the Worlds are currently on, or, there's a Who's Number One or whatever it is, and just watch jiu-jitsu as a spectator. Yeah. You'd be surprised like how much you learn. And that's a forever thing, because like we could pick a fight, right? We could go, okay, let's say, I don't know, like Gordon Ryan versus Buchecha from the last ADCC. And you could watch, actually that's a terrible example because that fight is dog shit boring. But, whatever fight, and you could watch that fight today, and then let's then ignore that fight and put it in your calendar to rewatch it in 4 years' time when you're a purple belt or brown belt or whatever. And I bet you, like, you'll see that fight differently because you've evolved as so my point being is it's not like you get to a certain level and there's nothing to be learned from watching jiu-jitsu as a spectator. So that's a great way to train, in little air quotes, like train the mental side of jiu-jitsu. Like, don't underestimate the power of just spectating the sport.
Yeah, 100%. Like when I was in Sweden, I was watching a shitload of grappling, like pro grappling, mostly the combat jiu-jitsu worlds.
Slappity slap.
Yeah,
slap.
But the funny thing is, like, there was barely any slaps. And I was talking to a friend of mine, Jeremy Skinner, who's a high-level competitor, and he was basically saying that in combat jiu-jitsu worlds, the guys that do the best are the ones that ignore the slapping and just get on with the jiu-jitsu. And he's right. It's like, I think no one really got touched up in this one.
Look, I think if you're competing at that level, a slap is, we'll put it this way, MMA fighters cop elbows to the face and carry on. Yeah. So a slap isn't gonna, I mean, if you're someone like me, I'll be like, ha.
Yeah.
My face. My face. Oh no. But like if you're a high level combat athlete, I mean, a slap is, I like the idea of it. Like, it makes sense. It's a good little bridge between that and MMA, and the idea of
the threat of it is what it's exciting.
The threat of it, but yeah, I think, you look at MMA and guys often like take repetitive like punches and elbows to the head. And unless they've been previously shaken, it doesn't usually end in a TKO, right? Yeah. It's usually only after they've already been rocked that then those preceding ground and pounds will earn a TKO or a knockout.
Or unless you're Khabib and you can hold them down for the entire fight and do it.
Yeah. But that most of the time you'll see if both guys are, fresh, if you will, those little hits don't do a lot, So then when you factor in, it's not a punch or an elbow, it's a slap.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, you were watching a lot of it, right?
Oh, I was watching heaps and I was learning heaps and just absorbing, just being like connected with jiu-jitsu, keeping it fresh on my mind. I was watching a lot of MMA as well.
It's like passive learning, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of be like, I want to, you're over there and let's say you wanted to devote a bit of your time to improve your Swedish, right? But maybe you were feeling like, I don't actually want to sit down and study. Man, just having like the Swedish TV show on in the background that you're kind of every now and like it's kind of half there. You're gonna be absorbing it
100%. Yeah,
naturally just by hearing it over and over. So kind of the same, right? You could just be. I was about to say AFK watching.
Yeah, you'd be AFK, so your brain's AFK.
Yeah. You could just be, not even really watching it, but you could just have some jiu-jitsu on. And
I did the same with MMA, but when I was watching MMA, now that I understand way more jiu-jitsu, it's so much more entertaining when they go to the ground. And it's so interesting to see
when you're watching MMA and it's one of the ones that Joe Rogan is commentating, he still does it, right? Just the big events.
Yeah, he does 10 a year.
Is that in his contract?
Yes.
He does 10 a year.
10 a year.
Yeah, right. I didn't know that. Anyway, you're like, Joe.
Yeah.
Joe.
Just start taking my pants off. Yeah. But
he is a great commentator. He's a very good commentator.
Good. But
whatever happened to his old partner commentator from back in the days? Was it Mark Gold? No, what am I gonna?
I have no idea.
The original UFC commentator, it was Joe Rogan and this other guy. Was it Mark Goldberg? Am I making that name up?
I have no idea. I think I vaguely know what you're talking about, but man, I'm a casual. I'm an MMA casual.
I often wonder that, like, when we say something, like right now, I'm like, is the guy's name Mark? And I wonder if there's ever a listener being like, it's Mark, bro. It's this.
Yeah, and there is legit. And they comment on YouTube. Shout out to everyone that comments on YouTube. Legit. Anytime we say, oh, fuck. You remember when we were talking about that piece of the ear? Like, oh, what's that part that holds the earbud in? Someone commented, oh, it's this.
Really?
I forget what it is now. Sorry. But yeah, it's like, oh yeah, it's called this because I got it pierced or something when I was a teenager. That's why I know. And like people always correcting us. I love it.
Mark Goldberg's a football manager. Hang on.
Yeah, right.
I'm going to find it out.
Marky Mark. Are you talking about Marky Mark? Like the
Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I thought you were confusing the two. That's interesting. But yeah, watching MMA through the lens of jiu-jitsu is super interesting to see how they implement the game.
Mike Goldberg. I was so close.
Yeah. But it's super interesting to see what they do and what they avoid doing in a context where you can be punched and elbowed in the face and what have you. Particularly, like, a good example is close guard, right? So a lot of the time, if say you were competing in jiu-jitsu, right? You're in a jiu-jitsu competition and someone's in there in open guard. Would you ever willingly put yourself in their close guard?
Yeah, no way.
Fuck no. But in MMA, they do it all the time because they can land some fucking shots, son.
Yeah.
And, there's not that many MMA fighters out there that would be able to capitalize it on it as easily as you could in a jiu-jitsu comp. Like, it's just insane to walk into someone's close guard to then have to pass again. But when you're punching them in the face, you can get to half guard and then you want to stay there.
Yeah.
Half guard's a great position to just fuck the other guy up, right?
Yeah.
So it's very, very interesting.
Yeah, I don't like getting punched in the face.
No, neither.
Slapped in the face by the right person.
Just slapped in general.
I guess to summarize, if you are about to find yourself in a position where you can't train, but you want to train or need to train, you've got working on your weaknesses. Like, I think you put it really nicely. I know you're a list person. You love your lists, but I think, it's a great idea because you might not be able to identify them or you might not realize what they are. But if someone says, list your 5 worst, like, what are your 5 weaknesses or the 5 things you think you're the worst at in jiu-jitsu, write them down. You might not, until you stop and think about it, you might not realize, like, man, fuck, I'm terrible at maintaining mount. I always, or whatever it is, right? Some of the things are just going to be technical, and the answer is gonna be, oh, like watch this instructional or whatever.
But try and think outside the box. I'd say, like, even if it is something like guard retention or a very specific thing, you're like, fuck, how the hell am I going to be able to do a mobility workout for this? Well, look at other things you can do. Look at, core stability. Look at strength exercises.
I mean, I guess for every position, there is always a way you could improve your body,
yeah, 100%,
to make that position
100%
stronger, right?
Yeah, you just need to be creative and stop being a bitch. 100%.
So we've got that side of things. You can be doing, whatever it is, agility training, strength training, flexibility, whatnot, do the things that you often neglect. If you want to do more jiu-jitsu specific movements, you've got programs like yoga for BJJ or probably more specifically Gymnastica Natural. It's like all jiu-jitsu movements, but a super intense workout. You got solo drilling, so strong, such a valuable tool. And then you've got just doing the mental side of things. So that could be, literally studying with a pen and paper. It could be watching instructionals. And for some people, it will be studying with a pen and paper. You might train at a gym that you've got a certain list of techniques that you need to memorize, right? Maybe you've got more of a very strict curriculum that you need to learn, whatever it is. So you've got the purely mental side of it, watching instructionals and, having a pen and paper studying, watching fights on flow grappling or whatever. That's how I think. Well, that's not how I think. I mean, I believe that's the best way that you can train when you don't have access to training partners or a gym. It's what I do. It's pretty much what you did in Sweden. And look at you now. You came back, first day back, bam, put you to sleep, bitch.
Yeah. Yeah, I was wondering when this was going to come up.
Yeah, it was briefly mentioned on our Instagram.
So let's just tell let's
get it out of the way,
listeners
Kieren.
what happened.
Before we wrap up, let's tell them what happened, Kieren. What happened?
Take it away, Adam.
You don't remember.
I don't remember.
No. So Kieren and I were having a good roll. It was second last roll of the night.
Yeah.
He was, as usual, smashing me. No. It was, where were we? I think we were half guard, and I think it was half guard.
Close guard.
No, it ended in close guard.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
But we were in half guard, and I put on an Ezekiel, and then you managed to re-guard back to close guard, and then promptly passed out.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, I remember afterwards you were like, but I tapped, right? And I was like, nah, man, you passed out and I let go. And you weren't out for very long. Yeah. Like the second I let go, you like coughed back to life, So you weren't passed out for long enough that I needed to like shake your legs and whatever. Like you instantly came back. We were a bit foggy for a while. Yeah. And it was funny because you were like, oh, fuck, I should have tapped, blah, blah, blah. Because you've got a habit of tapping too late.
Yeah.
Right. But I did say to you, it was quite funny, but I did say to you that not to stress too hard because I wouldn't have tapped in that situation. I shouldn't be able to Ezekiel choke you inside your closed guard, but I can from half guard. So, the fact that you had gotten back to full guard, I only had like one more squeeze in me before I would have let go because I can't finish the Ezekiel there. So I only had one more squeeze. And if that squeeze didn't get the job done, I was going to let go.
Yeah.
So if I was in your situation, I wouldn't have tapped either, even though it was super tight. And I know you knew it was tight. Me in that situation, I would have just been holding on going, they've got to let go.
That's
like they can't finish it here.
Yeah.
But, the cards just didn't fall in your favor this time, but if you remain conscious for like 1 more second, 2 more seconds, like I would have let go.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't get it. You passed out, but it wasn't your typical, man, what are you doing? You should have
it wasn't
tapped.
in like a rear naked choke and just being a stubborn bastard. Yeah.
Although I did have you in a bow and arrow earlier in the day that, man, you held on for ages. You said you almost puked afterwards. My fingers hurt so much on the collar. I'm surprised how long you held on to that.
Yeah, I don't know why. That was it during the lunch class when we rolled. I don't know what I was thinking. I was thinking that I could have just grit through it. And man, it's a bad habit, but I get in positions, particularly with like higher belts, where they have something on. This happens with me and Joey all the time. He has something on, and normally you would just tap because it's uncomfortable. It's like, fuck this, I want to get out. But if you hold long enough, they give up.
Yeah.
So I was hoping you'd give up. You didn't give up. So
I'm not going to lie. I wanted to. My fingers were hurting pretty. I think it was,
it was too deep.
A bit of a lot of time
deep.
off.
Yeah.
I thought you were actually going to strip the grip. I don't know if you noticed, but I fell down to, I think, 2 fingers on the collar. And I thought you were going to reach down and like rip the collar out of my fingers.
I should have done that.
But you didn't. Yeah. That probably would have broken the grip. My fingers were hanging on by,
there you go.
by a thread.
But yeah, I like before our roll, I like smashed a whole bunch of
pre-workout?
No, it wasn't pre. It was just, I think it was amino acids and
you don't even know what you're taking anymore.
No, I can't remember which session I had this because I supplement like, most of the time only one session, but yesterday rather, I did both. I think it was just essential amino acids and it was some hydrolyte. So yeah, and I smashed a whole bunch of that. I nearly puked it up. I full gagged. It was gross. Nothing came out. I was like, yeah.
Well, we'll see what happens in the lunch class then, won't we?
Yeah. No, it was good. It was good. But no, it was, man, I'm feeling pretty wrecked. Even after one day, like got some, those, how you get cuts on your fingers when you come back to training and like certain muscles are like, oh, that's a bit tight, but fuck, man, I'm doing so much mobility. I feel better than I would have if I didn't, if that makes sense.
It's only Wednesday.
Yeah.
It feels like Tuesday because Monday was a public holiday.
Yeah. It's only Wednesday.
That's why No-Gi Rob rocked up in No-Gi today.
Yeah, shout out to No-Gi Rob.
Go No-Gi Rob. So funny story, like we've mentioned him before on the podcast. Rob is someone who is a white belt, but he's trained for quite a long time. He's in the Navy, so he, gets moved around, hence why he's never been given his blue belt because of his
not good enough.
Yeah, because of his career, he's never been in the one place for long enough. But Rob's really good, prefers no-gi, trained with Lockie out of Absolute MMA. And so he just got like sort of the nickname No-Gi Rob. He visited the Alliance in North Sydney the other day and he walked in, he was like, said to Fabricio, the owner, who we've had on the show as well, oh, hi, I'm Rob. And he was like, No-Gi Rob? And he's like, yeah, how do you know? And he's like, oh, I was just listening to the podcast.
No-Gi Rob.
So,
we're making you famous, son.
Yeah, we're going to make a rashi or, a rashi that's like No-Gi Rob or something.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, that's a good place to leave it on No-Gi Rob. I just wanted to put a little bit of a plug / shout out. I just want to shout out 2 of our Patreons, two latest Patreons, our first Patreons. Thank you so much for
Thank
supporting.
You guys. Super, super appreciate it.
Yeah, shout out to Ed and Nicholas. You know who you are. Thanks for supporting. And if you want to get amongst the Patreon, you can do so. Find the link at our Instagram.
You're like, you know who you are. And I'm like, yeah, so does everyone else now. You just said their names.
That's all right. There's heaps of people like that. There's heaps of people called
Eds
Ed.
and Nicholases.
Yeah, there's so many. But you guys are unique.
Yeah, that specific Ed and that specific Nicholas. You know who you are.
Yeah.
No, yeah, but thank you guys. No,
thank
actually,
you.
It's super appreciated.
And if you want to get amongst the Patreon, you get early access to the episodes. Monthly Ask Me Anything, and Adam is going to be doing some review of technique.
Yeah,
if you want to submit,
review like technique reviews.
Yeah, if you want to submit your technique rolling footage or what have you, competition footage, Adam will review that and potentially do a little bit of an instructional sort of piece on it.
Sorry to interrupt, Kieren. Also, first dibs on when we do the limited editions runs of our merchandise. We've had a few people requesting Kieren and I have got some Beyond Jiu-Jitsu rash guards, which we kind of just made as a bit of fun.
Yeah.
But quite a few people have been like, bro, where can I get one?
Yeah.
So we're actually, that's cool.
We're going to do a run.
We didn't think people would want to, but it'll just be a very limited amount of stock, and Patreons for sure will get first dibs.
Yeah, 100%. So if you want to get amongst the Patreon, we really appreciate all the support. You can do so by going to our Instagram at BeyondJujitsu_podcast. And there's a link there directly to our Patreon. Or you can just jump on Google, search Beyond Jiu-Jitsu Podcast Patreon, and you'll find it. And till next time, guys. Thanks for listening.
Peace.